One feature most major German cities have are tramways. Munich, Bremen, Freiburg, Braunschweig, Darmstadt, half of Berlin, and in the coming years even Kiel. Tramways in Germany even come in two fun flavors. There's your typical streetcar systems called Straßenbahns, and whose main advantage over buses is capacity. Then there's Stadtbahns, which can operate like Straßenbahns, but can also run on standard rail lines. And obviously, either of these can have dedicated sections of track, grade separation, be put in tunnels if you so please, and be either high or low floor. But there's one major German city that's different from all the others when it comes to tram operation. No Stadtbahns like in Frankfurt or Cologne, no crazy tram airport connections like in Bremen, and certainly no streetcar lines that masquerade as proper metro lines like in, Boston. No, Hamburg does things differently than pretty much every other major German city by having no trams at all. Yeah, my mug has boobies, I'm not afraid to admit it. Before I get into this, hi, I'm Jamie. I live in Stade, a town in Lower Saxony that isn't in Hamburg, but that's close enough to be in the S-Bahn network. I go to Hamburg a lot, and I know I'm about to list some serious complaints. Hell, I've complained about Hamburg in the past, but really I want to make it clear, Hamburg, on the whole, has some fantastic transit. I just think it could be better, and should be better. And trust me, there is a lot to like in Hamburg. Just look at all those canals and green spaces. Oh, and if you haven't been to Miniature Wonderland, you're missing out. Case in point in Hamburg's favor, the Hamburg U-Bahn network. A full-on 4, soon to be 5, line metro system that works great in most of the areas it serves. But take one look at an U-Bahn map of Hamburg, and you'll realize it doesn't cover everywhere. Despite often being cited as a reason Hamburg doesn't need trams, I would beg to differ. Yes, the U-Bahn is supplemented by the S-Bahn network, but look at this map of rail coverage in Hamburg, or in Lura, or like this BRT corridor near Domtor Station that looks supposedly like it could be a tram right of way. And that's because, at one point, it was! Hamburg actually had a very robust tram network until 1978, though its demise was actually decided by the Hamburg Senate 20 years earlier in 1958. And why? Why replace a robust tram system with buses? I'll let you guess why. But did you pick short-sighted car-centric urban planning inspired by the US? Well, maybe that's not the whole story, though it's definitely part of it. You may have seen this image floating around the internet of this beautiful bridge across the Elbe, which had its stone facade completely torn down so it could be expanded to accommodate more cars. Actually, it has a sister bridge that still has the stone facade, which you can see here. If you look at some older pictures, you may also notice a tram on that first bridge. What, tram space removed to accommodate cars? No.
Stop it. Get some help.
Of course it was cars. I mean, hey, going all on road infrastructure has worked so well in the past in Berlin, especially nowadays, and Houston, Toronto. Okay, that strip just a shot right outside of Hamburg hot enough. Wow, a rail-based mode of transport that doesn't cross the same rail bridge as every other S-Bahn regional freight and long-distance train to Hamburg. What a convenient way for commuters to avoid this often unreliable choke point without worrying about riding a bus that may also, in fact, have less capacity than a tram and also get stuck in car traffic. I found this really fantastic map on Reddit of all places, which compiles data from a ton of old map data to make this modern representation of what the Hamburg tram network looked like in 1955, 3 years before the Senate ruled to remove it. And if you look at it, you'll notice a lot of really useful features that the modern Hamburg rail systems don't quite cover. There's service in the often underserved areas south of the Elbe River, some in areas that still don't have any meaningful forms of transit nowadays. There's also a ton of routes that actually bypass Hauptbahnhof, another choke point on the entire Hamburg metro system because all lines cross through there. Well, except for the AKN lines, but really that's rural rail. And also, there's service in areas such as Schnelsen, a rather populous part of town that, until the completion of the S5 North extension in a few years, is currently only served by the aforementioned small AKN diesel rail buses. I really think Hamburg deserves to get its tram service back. I think I speak for a lot of people in the Hamburg area, and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but please, holy crap, just let me have any rail-based way into town that avoids Hauptbahnhof. Dear God, why is it so crowded all the goddamn time? The Hamburg tram story does not end with its demise though. Enter the Hamburg Stadtbahn plan. Not to be confused with the old tram network, which was the Hamburg Straßenbahn system. There's been a whole bunch of pushes to revive tram service in Hamburg over the years. These have ranged from pitches to completely restore the system to its 1950s glory, to even building a temporary new tram line in the Lurup region as a stopgap while the Exo South line is built at some point. But the Hamburg Stadtbahn plan was one of the biggest proposals yet, first coming onto the scene fully in 2008, with first approval meetings happening in 2010, this system was going to initially consist of 4 lines all around the west and center of Hamburg, providing some really valuable coverage to some underserved areas, along with allowing more interconnectivity between the U-Bahn and S-Bahn systems. It was actually more of a light rail or tram train system in a few parts anyways, with some sections set to use existing rail right-of-ways instead of operating in the streets. And then, politics happened. The first part of what would become this plan was actually approved all the way back in 2001 by the Hamburg Senate, then led by a coalition of the Social Democrats and the Greens. And then there was an election and the more conservative CDU got into power, and that put a stop to that. Because, God forbid, drivers in Hamburg yield some space, am I right? However, in 2008, we got the more fleshed out version of the plan. Also that year, another election happened, this time resulting in the CDU forming an alliance with the Greens, with one of their coalition points being the formation of the Stadtbahn system. So, plan saved, right? Well, until the end of 2010 when politics happened yet again, and the CDU put a stop to the Stadtbahn. Again. Between this and actions taken by the current CDU state government in Berlin, I'm kind of getting the idea that these Christian Democrat folks don't like public transit too much, but maybe I'm just not seeing the importance of just allowing SUVs to cruise through our city centers at 50 kilometers an hour. In my opinion, based on data I gathered in this video, of course, all views expressed on Tales from the S-Bahn are my own. When the Social Democrats came back into power the following Hamburg election, with now Chancellor of Germany Olaf Scholz at the helm, they did not revive the Stadtbahn project. Instead, we got a bus acceleration program and also cemented plans for what's now the U4 line, which until recently was just a spur off the U2 line that went into the newly built up Hampton City District. But hey, heavy rail is always better than stinky old trams, right? I mean, we got 3 big, beautiful new stations, which are really quite beautiful actually, that's not sarcasm. On the only metro line I've ever ridden on that makes a complete U-turn. What the hell is with this complete section where there's no interchanges? Why did you build a line into Hafen City with no direct connections to the Elbphilharmonie? That's like the cornerstone of the district. Also, nothing against Hafen City, it's really pretty there, but it's also a district that's, well, rather upscale and touristy. But hey, isn't that fairer than getting 4 totally stupid new tram lines serving traditionally underserved areas, stretching nearly 50 kilometers in length with 85 different stops? Note to self, bring this up in therapy. But hey, not all is lost. The U4 line is getting longer with the Horner-Geest extension happening at some point. That line also eventually is set to cross south across the river to Grassbrook on its own right-of-way, giving, as I complained about earlier, another alternative to those south of the Elbe that doesn't use the main rail bridge, which is a good thing. And maybe we can change things if we really do want those trams back. I believe in organizing collective action, and clearly at least some people in Hamburg want these things back. Activism is crucial nowadays, seemingly more than ever, especially if we want good public goods done, and transit is a public good, so screw it. Let's get this trending. I don't care if hashtags are kind of cringe. Hashtag Tramburg. Putting in the title, putting in the description. Let's get this trending on whatever social media platforms you use. Do people still use Twitter? Haven't used that forever. What are y'all using now? Threads? I mean, come on, if Kiel can construct a kick-ass new tram system, why can't Hamburg? Speaking of construction and such, here's an interesting question I got recently on my S5 video, the video I did where I complained about the Hamburg S5 line. So, like, if Hamburg Hauptbahnhof is my least favorite station in Hamburg, what's my favorite? If we want to get technical about the entirety of the USA Bahn in Hamburg, my least favorite station, though it's not technically an HVB operated station, is Neumünster Süd. If you've ever been to Neumünster Süd, that sucks. But if we're talking about my favorite station, because if we're talking aesthetic, I know I just complained a little about the U4, but the Hafen City Universität stop with those big, like, glowing cubes in there is really beautiful.
Alright, it's time for another elevator smell test. This time for Hafen City Universität U-Bahn station. Unsurprisingly, as one of the newest stations in Hamburg, well, I don't know, Elbrücken had a weird smell on the S-Bahn side, but this one is immaculate, and there's a pretty cool view out the windows as you go up of these big square things that change color. That said, this road that it puts you out on is basically begging for a tram line.
Deep in space and time.